Well, first off, thanks again very much for attending the AFS User Conference. It's been a great, exciting couple of days. I know at least for me, my feet will tough can attest to that as well. So the session today is specifically post-event analysis, lessons from the rearview mirror using the past performance data, and help you kind of get a map of master road to success. It's a mouthful right there. So kind of long thing. It's not version specific, so it's really lessons for the trade marketing group. Again, my name is Cartwright. I have been in consumer packaging for about 20 years in different finance, accounting, and sales operations roles. I started my life in CPG at Sara Lee Foods, part of the consolidation of the meat group way back when, and then went to Sunny Delight and started a company after we acquired it from Procter & Gamble. And then Kimberly-Clark, where I manage the Kroger team, the finances there. Same, of course, at Kimberly-Clark as we cover every orifice of the body. And then I have a few wonderful stories there, but I won't go into. At which point I made the transition to the dark side, which is software. I've done service support, solution engineering. I did a short stint in demand tech and came back, because like a bad penny, I came back to AFS Technologies from the MBI position. With me today is my father, Glenn Carlson.
It's family business.
It's a family business. Glenn, just give us a little background, please.
So I have spent my entire career on the CP side of the business. Actually started with a supermarket chain in the Northeast, Pathmark. Have you ever known Pathmark?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Supermarket General.
It's delightful people, right? It took me 10 years after leaving Pathmark to finally get that F-word out of utilizing it in everyday conversation. I'm very fond of Midway. So then I did work with Midway after I was in Pathmark. My last role was in category management, and then I've been on this side of the business for about 10 years with different companies. You and I actually worked together at Demand Tech. And before MBI was acquired by AFS, I worked on the team that delivered or broke the U.S. market with the MBI TPM application. So I've been here with AFS almost coming up on a year or so, and actually delighted to be in front of you and working with a very good friend of mine.
Thanks, Glenn. So the agenda, what we want to do is really the truth about post-event analysis. Really, the key components of that are defining your success parameters, evaluation metrics, understanding what your result metrics are, and event analysis. And typically what I find, having talked to a lot of customers out there in regards to post-event analysis, it's always number one on their RFPs when they're looking for a solution. How can they do better post-event analysis? And it always goes down the path of consumption data. I need consumption data to do post-event analysis. Well, I don't buy consumption data for just about everybody. So we need to utilize more of the shipment data and expected model. But then the next component is customers ask me, well, what's the best way to analyze my events? So they need to develop some internal metrics to get there. So really the objective here is to help better define your success parameters for post-promotion activity. Understand the best way for your organization to determine the base volume, which is the key metric to begin your analysis for ROI and lift, be it for a non-consumption data reporting customer. So essentially customers you buy data for. How can I get an ROI analysis for a post-event? And again, as I mentioned, how base volume is the key analytical point. And as well, understanding the true incremental volume and its impact, volume versus demand. And then finally, understand how merchandising events can impact promotions and volume. So what I first like to do is I know this might be kind of old hat for a lot of you, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Post-event analysis, you need a starting point, and that becomes base volume. So we need to determine what base volume is. And my experience, this is transferred across different organizations. Different people look at what base volume is compared to somebody else. Some include an EDLP within their base volume. So really, as an organization, you have to come to understanding what your base volume is. And you want to, the first way to do this with consumption data is let the shopper behavior determine what your base volume is. So let the shoppers determine what your base volume is. So let Nielsen tell you what your base volume is. Now, regardless of what application you're on, you can, of course, get the base volume out of that solution from prior year history, just define the parameters. Again, it goes back to, I need to establish what base volume is. But what POS data will do, it'll define the sale in base versus incremental. Sometimes people refer to it as deal and not on deal. And again, the main drawback of that, it's not available for all planned accounts, or it's just plain too costly. So I definitely won't do that. We want to define the success parameters, and this is the biggest component within post-event analysis as well as my price points, but I want to understand my merchandising activity and how all that rolls out into a net unit cost. The one thing I've learned in many years in finance in CPG, and bosses have told me, Joel, I need to get it down to one number. I need to get it down to one number, and that number is typically net unit cost. And the net unit cost is net of trade, and understanding my merchandising events and the activity from a pricing standpoint. So, what you want to understand is your POS and then how they impact the base volume and being able to measure incremental events. So when I run that feature display, is it driving folks down the aisle? Now, there's also another way to look at post-event analysis, not only from a success of the promotion itself, but from a compliance standpoint. I don't know if anybody gone down this road, but you know when you go meet with the Kroger buyer, he agrees to $2.99 in a full feature and display, but do you get that execution? So typically what I recommend to folks is not necessarily maybe looking at merchandising event analysis right off the bat. Maybe go into it from the perspective of compliance standpoint. I went in at Kroger, I agreed to a 15-week feature and display at this price, but it wasn't in the full execution at the stores. What was that level? Again, you want to make sure that the data volume aligns the incremental volume to the event execution. The only drawback with analyzing consumption data from point of sale, or the merchandising from point of sale data, you don't know if it comes off the rack or if it comes off the shelf. So it's difficult to really manage the incremental volume from merchandising. Pricing. I mean, how many people spend days on understanding what's my price point? What's my out-shelf price point and my TPR? What do I need to run out? Again, that gets into the discussion of price elasticity, what's my pricing threshold, and understanding that. Price point. What is my shelf price for typical volume movement? Within the tools, in any TPM tool without consumption data, you can see from a graph standpoint your price point at shelf and what will drive volume. Very typically done that way. Again, as I mentioned, the pricing threshold and understanding what that price point is. So the key metrics, volume, merchandising, and pricing is what you would want to understand from an analysis standpoint. Getting more in detail from the analysis metrics regarding volume. Again, baseline. What's the normal expected volume of a product in the absence of any store level promotion? So from within my TPM tool, if I don't get consumption data, I can certainly run a historical report to get an understanding of, okay, show me all my volume that was not on deal, but I want to pull in the EDLP performance type so I can better understand that. Again, baseline can be sourced from IRM Nielsen. So the key takeaway is you basically get two ways you get it. You get it from Nielsen, or you're going to get it from your TPM solution, isolating specific performance or promotion performances that you would want to define in your parameters. From which point, there's two ways to look at incremental. Typically in the TPM tool without consumption data, your base volume starts as your set volume for analytics. So what I mean by that, I set my base volume in week 1, that's base volume, but I sell 2,000 cases in week 1. 1,000 now becomes incremental. That's the best way to look at it. I would defy anybody to give me a better solution to do that. That's the best way to look at it. So then, or you can have the consumption data. So again, it's incremental volume is your actuals versus your baseline. That's why it's so important to make sure that your base volume is accurate. Is it going to be 100% accurate? Probably not. But as long as the organization agrees upon it, this is what I'm going to analyze my activity for, then directionally it's going to be absolutely correct. Then understanding my analytical measures regarding volume metrics. This is accounting 101, my percent ROI. Gain on investment minus my cost of investment, divided by the cost of investment. So this is where it's very important to make sure that your contribution information is within the tool and your COGS information is within the tool. A lot of folks who I've talked to, I've implemented, I've sold to, I'll put my COGS data in there. You're just not totally getting the utilization out of the application that you really need. So it's important to get the most up-to-date COGS information within the tool. Understanding my percent lift, either from a dollar standpoint or as a percentage. Always the question to me is, What's the right number? I can calculate a percentage. What's the dollar figure? I typically talk ROI percent, or excuse me, lift as a percentage. 125%, 135%. If I talk dollars, and I've worked in CPG companies that talk it both ways, as a percentage or as a dollar. My RO or my lift is 1.25. I spend $1, I should get $1.25 back in incremental one. That's the way to think about it as well. The key takeaway as an organization, you need to decide what are the key metrics, how am I going to measure going forward. There is no right or wrong. It's again your cultural understanding of how you want to analyze. Merchandising conditions. Within your TPM tool, you have your merchandising conditions. Feature and display in your temporary price reductions. You want to encompass all that spending, again, into one number, net unit cost. Because I want to be able to understand, I've got all these activities running at once. Feature only, feature and display, a display only. And those are overlapping. I need to be able to segment between the two. Because from that, I need to understand my percentage of volume. Percent of the retail volume sold in conjunction with the trade merchandising activity. Now, this is where consumption data becomes very important. Because then I can align a feature activity and see what volume I've got from that. So the percentage of volume. Then the first thing you learn in day one when you start to work for a CPG company is understanding what the percent ACV level. Understanding what that measures really mean. What is my support level at shelf? And they want to encompass the percentage ACV levels that participate in the trade merchandising activity. So let's take a step back. Compliance. First thing when I would do a post-event analysis, I looked at, all right, I'm looking at my ACV level. Why is it so bad? I'm in all the stores. Am I really? Let's go back and take the execution information to make sure that I did get full compliance on my activity. So that's the first place I would look. It's not maybe necessarily that the promotion didn't perform well, it just was poorly executed. Next thing I'm doing, I'm calling my buyer and saying, I'm not running this again until I get full compliance. Pricing. Again, we talked about this. The retail pricing information is coming from multiple sources. You would want to gauge the validity of that store, the pricing information. But basically, the retail price is coming from the tapes. You're getting from the marketing reps, the retail execution, what's the right price in store, as well as compliance on the displays and the feature and the ad. Price data is typically gathered separately from store movement data. So if feature prices find are lower than the tape prices, well, then there's probably overrides and things like that you're going to have to encompass as well. Again, I'm going to go back and review my compliance information. Again, it's getting it down to one number. The one thing I always learned to get on the finance side, I need to understand my price per unit. I look at price per unit from a trade standpoint. How much am I spending? I spent $1.25, what did we get? So my price, package price per unit for those scan cells, and applying that same thought process from the shipment standpoint. Price per equivalent unit. I don't know how many of you had to deal in equivalized volumes, but I had to. When I sold gallon juice, I sold gallon juice in a gallon open stock case. I sold gallon juice on a full pallet, and I sold gallon juice on a full mixed pallet. I need to understand what my gallon juice equivalized price is. So being able to calculate what that is and break down the prices. A good TPM tool will do that. Of course, ours do that. The one drawback when you're talking pricing is understanding the average price. Now, this is confusing to a lot of folks who I talk to who utilize our tools. Average price is taking all the merchandising activity as well as your pricing activity and encompassing my average price. So it may kind of go up and down. So when you're looking at it, it's a weighted price for all the scan scale of the product, anything you've done, units sold in the store. So understanding what that is, a weighted price. Non-promoted price, that's my everyday price at shelf. That's what I'm comparing my TPRs against and what movement I'm getting based upon that price. My price elasticity and understanding what that is. So I'm going to turn it over to Glenn and take you through the next slides.
Thanks. So we're looking at some information here, and what Joel has kind of laid out as his foundation for what some of those metrics that we're subsequently going to use and some of the things that we're looking at. However, when you think about the way to do post-event, we talk about post-event analysis. Post-event analysis can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. Okay? You might be embarking upon something today and say, "Oh yeah, we're doing post-mortems on all of our events." and to what level, to what degree. And as Joel would say, you kind of have an understanding or provide some knowledge with regard to some of the things you need to capture. But what I wanted to kind of talk about, and the heading is up here, is event analysis in totality. That a lot of times when you're embarking on this and you're looking at individual events, it's really, really hard because of when shipments occur, when scan occurs, cutoff dates. So looking at one subsequent individual event can be very, very hard to determine whether it's successful or not. When I talk about events in totality, event analysis in totality, I'm talking about looking at it over a long period of time, or over a long period of time. Here's an example with regard to a retailer that I did some analysis for, where they had moved their promoted price point from 3 for 10 every day to 3 for 12 every day, and they had 8 opportunities per year at 2 weeks each. This is what I wanted to understand. So I'm saying not necessarily the one individual event, but the entire plan. Sometimes that gets lost. And the reason that we're taking a look at this, and the reason that I wanted to kind of talk about this is that it is really, really difficult sometimes to get to that very, very finite event. But when you look at things across a bigger period of time, it's a great starting point. Because then at least, when I'm talking about, as Joel had said, is like, hey, directionally, anytime you can expand that, look at it from the standpoint of a given product over a given period of time. For example, in this case, this was for a 52-week period of time. 2003 actuals, what we actually did, and then compare those variances, and then be able to drive what the trade per case was going to look like, what the evaluation was, and saying, are we moving in the right direction? So it's like here we have goals. The goal is to decrease, for example, not maybe the trade overall dollars, but when the trade, as the trade applies to, as we look at it on a trade rate per case, I can sometimes wrap my arms around those numbers a lot easier than I can an individual event versus looking at it in totality. Does it kind of help make some sense? Okay, at least with regard to when you're starting and saying, like, post-event, we don't get hung up on the moniker of event being maybe one individual event. An event being, it's like, yes, it was an entire plan that we put in place for Kroger. Or in this case, when I was looking at these logos and mega ads, I can't tell you who the retailer was, but this was actually for Cartwright. So we know Cartwright, like my good friends at Pathmark, God rest their souls. They can be a little difficult to deal with. Right? However, when we start to look at things in totality, it's like you might go underwater on some individual events, but I have to make it up maybe with my everyday business. This is kind of a way when you start to look at things in totality, be able to understand the metrics and what is important to you. Might be a little difficult to see. I'll go back where you guys are. Well, that's pretty pale. Do you guys do this with either syndicated data or with your own weekly information? We used to call them the bump charts, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, and as Joel was alluding to, with regard to the syndicate or looking at base, this little darker orange line is where the base was, and there's my spikes. This was really, really effective with regard to at least putting in front of individuals to say, what did we do? What did we do at ShopRite over the past year? It's like, so I can take a look at my volume. I can see my base, my incremental. What was my average price? Because again, Joel was, again, these are important metrics. What was my price when I'm not on sale? What was my price when I went on sale? Can I actually see what those spikes are? And then do some very, very rudimentary analysis with regard to those individual promotions. At least from the standpoint of the data that we know. And as Joel had said, it's like, it's not perfect, but you have to start somewhere. And if you start by looking at it in totality like this, at least giving somebody a picture for what's happening, then you look at the previous screen, I roll the whole thing up and I start to analyze and look at the metrics that are important, we can start to make some better decisions. So information that's here is like, I took the opportunity to kind of break out some of these individual promotions that you see, look at the price point, look at the volume, look at the trade dollars, and again, you can break that down to price, I can look at my volume, I can look at my margin percent, but then also understanding what are really the important metrics, because again, Mr. Cartwright says, like, bring about that cost of goods information so we can really look at a true profitability. What was my case cost? What was my allowance, my net case cost? Factor in others to get to these key metrics. Post-event analysis, or any analysis that has to do with either an individual promotion or in totality, it's very important that you not the analysis itself, what you're driving towards. What are the metrics that we're looking to improve? Is it rate per case? If it's rate per case, then we can say it's rate per case. What do we want to do with rate per case? You know what a good starting point is? Let's get it lower. That's a mantra that has been used at many companies that we work with. We want it to improve. We want rate per case to go down. How much is irrelevant? We ran promotions at Cartwright when I was with Minute. We lost money every single year to the tune of about $450,000 because we happened to be in the orange juice category. We couldn't get it to zero in 1 year. We said, let's lose less than $450,000 a year. Let's shoot for 300. There'll be a huge improvement. Is it zero? No. Will the guy from Kroger come in and say, I'm making millions? But you're not dealing with them. So improvement is a good thing, but you got to look at what you have to be measuring something. You've got to be looking to improve something. Typically, and again, equalizations, things like rate per case or cost per net unit are important to either improve them, look at driving trade down to some level, looking to actually even keeping volume stable, but actually lowering trade, or maybe actually increasing, as long as we're looking at that metric that is important to drive us towards improving our business. Here was something that, and again, it goes a little bit beyond now what we would look at post-event analysis, but when we start to talk about what the improvements, if we are able to garner improvements from some of these changes, looking at some of these metrics, actually making improvements, what can we do, what can we do in terms of assuming some benefits related to sales, retailer, category, etc., with a margin? This is my example. It was with Cartwright. But subsequently, my total investment here, my net benefit of actually doing that can be improved over the course of time, so that when we start to look at not just one retailer, but numerous retailers across numerous PPGs, you can see that it's extremely significant. This was an analysis that I did for a customer that we worked with for Cartwright to show an executive management team like why we needed to actually improve, why we needed to actually focus on our ROI, why we needed to actually improve our rate per case spending, even if we spent more on a rate per case, it might have been less, so that we can make investments into the future for our business. We'll finish kind of with, I think we got some just closing thoughts here. If you're going to do this, or you embark upon this, and as Joel had said, we kind of have a foundation for some of the facts that we need to look at, and some of the measures and the metrics that we need to look at, where we want to be, when we want to make improvement. It's like, look at a specific retailer, work with a retailer to tailor that strategy that achieves mutual benefits. I don't recommend anybody in the Northeast. Maybe slip a little bit further south down to maybe Publix. Publix is a good one. They love to do funky things with buy one, get ones. So, but achieving something that is mutually beneficial. You can't expect to pull the carpet from underneath a retailer and then be happy about it. But they also know that you're in business to do business. So like things have to be mutually beneficial. Don't deviate, okay? And this is an example that we had, but it's like when you put together that strategy, and I have examples here, what we wanted to do, we actually made a prescriptive strategy or prescribed a strategy to them and said that we're going to hold the course over an entire period of time, whether it be 6 months or an entire year, to see how we can prove this out. We're not going to let ourselves get caught up in maybe one individual promotion, because anything can happen with one individual promotion. Right? So we're looking at longer periods of time. And allow the retailer to give you input. All right? These things really, really work when the retailer understands that you're as invested in their business as they are. And they do want to work towards solutions if you're looking at entire plans. like I had said, the reason that I started out this, when I was talking about this in totality, is because we can't quibble with a retailer over one individual promotion a lot of times. There's got to be give and take. I got to give you this one, but I need this. And it balances out. Not with Northeast retail. But elsewhere in the country, you can do these types of things. So with that, as I think Joe and I would like to, cut that into your time. We'll take any questions, but the idea is establish that framework, look to establish the metrics that you need to improve, put a fundamental plan in place, work with a single retailer to actually get this started so that you can making market improvements to invest not only with that retailer, but with other retailers to prove this out.
Any questions? Thank you all very much. Travel safe.